The photographer who captured these images is reaching new heights every time he reaches for his camera. With Lee Cowan, we'll watch him at work.
At first glance, his images look more like circuit boards, nerve centers surging with energy. But while these are hubs of activity, they're not the kind in our computers. These are the world's great cities, photographed the way the heavens see them, sparkling spectacles below.
It's almost as you watch the avenues up and down, you're feeling the arteries of the blood flow of the city. You literally perceive the depth and the three-dimensionality of the Earth in a different way, and you see distances in a different manner. They look much smaller, much more within reach.
Vincent Laforet has taken aerial photography to new heights. His images have transformed the spaghetti bowls of LA's freeways, the glittering strip of Sin City, Las Vegas, and made London's Big Ben look more like a big jewel.
It was almost an outer-body experience because it's just so beautiful from up there.
They're just a few of his godlike glimpses that he's publishing in a new book, fittingly called Air.
Since I was 13 years old, like everyone else, I look out of the windows of a commercial aircraft and I'm fascinated by it. I see every little intersection, the police cars, the stadiums, and you wonder what's going on down there. You can see this incredible diorama of activity.
Vince spends a lot of time in helicopters, but not the way you might expect. He doesn't just hover a few hundred feet above, as you do in most choppers. Vince asks his pilot to take him up to 9, 10, 11,000 feet and higher, altitudes helicopters rarely fly.
Some veteran helicopter pilots actually refuse to go up there. They're just not comfortable. The first time I went up, it was scary because I'd never been that high in an open window or door in a harness leaning out, and you see planes going right underneath you. Your heart skips a beat.
So when he asked us to join him on his recent flight over the city of Miami, well, how could we resist?
It's the best seat in the house. You got it.
We took off just before sunset and headed east toward Miami Beach.
November 630, Tango X-ray,
with a brief stop hovering over a couple in a pool.
What is it that you're really looking for? I'm looking down there and trying to make order out of chaos. I'm looking for pattern, geometry, color, and light. What's it like when you're literally leaning out over the edge of the chopper? You forget about it after a while. You're so focused on getting that image. Do you ever think about the fall? The only time I thought about it was at high altitude over New York.
That's when a physicist explained to him that a fall from that high up could last a terrifying 41 seconds.
That's how long the fall would be. Yeah, and I was like, thanks for telling me, now I know. Too long. Way too long. All right, let's go towards downtown looking west.
Okay, you got it.
Once it got dark, we started going higher. Now, helicopters can be like flying blenders. They vibrate wildly, and Vince has to try to hold the camera steady while shooting at very low shutter speeds, often as the chopper goes into steep banking turns.
I'll get you over top of the hole in a second here.
Coming in, perfect, beautiful. Oh, elevation.
The hot Florida air got cool and crisp as we climbed even more, until we were at about 8,000 feet. Nothing between us and downtown Miami except air.
As a photographer, as a visual communicator, you try to find images no one's seen before. That's your goal. And that's a pretty tall order in 2015 when everyone has a camera on their phone.
Laforet is used to breaking ground, although he's usually on the ground to do it. Back in 2008, he was one of the first to shoot video on a 35mm digital camera. His mini-movie, called Reverie, was something few had ever seen, certainly not from what most considered basically a still camera. But that's just him. Ever since he was a child, something about the visual just clicked.
And when I was 15, I asked my father, who was a photographer, can I borrow your camera? And then I picked up this camera, I took a picture, and I was done. And I was like, that's it.
He was rarely without a camera after that, and he soon became the youngest staff photographer ever hired by the New York Times.
I would always say I want to find something that either people can't see or don't want to see.
So you climbed all the way up?
He once scaled the antenna on top of the Empire State Building, sand safety harness, mind you, just to get a shot like this.
This is about 1,475 feet up.
In the days after the attacks of 9/11, LaForest was dispatched to Pakistan, much to his surprise.
I was not a war photographer.
You didn't want to be on the front lines.
No. When bullets fly, I hit the ground and I stay down.
But staying down turned out to be his secret, capturing not so much the war, but the victims of it.
These were real people, that had families, that were just as afraid as people back in the States.
LaForest shared the Pulitzer Prize for feature photography that year. He was only 27.
That and Katrina, a few years later, are the two stories that really formed me as a journalist. When you see what happened in New Orleans to Americans, in our country, that really shakes your foundation up pretty seriously.
So seriously that LaForest needed a change. He quit his job as a photojournalist and decided to pull away from it all for a while.
Now you're doing something where there aren't people and perhaps emotions in your pictures anymore.
There's something very odd that happens when you go up in the air, in that, ironically, it's kind of intimate. I can't explain it.
Vincent LaForest has always pushed the envelope, but for him it's not about being a daredevil. It's about finding and capturing what we often lose on the ground, a sense of peace and perspective.
I think when you take a step back from anything, you see things more clearly. And in a visual way, I think air is a representation of that. Is to literally take some distance from the street level view. And you see, we're all in this together.